Tampa Interchange, often referred to as the DTI, involves 3 safety and operational improvements to the I-275 I-4 interchange. The 3 safety operational improvements each has their own financial FPID, as shown here. A separate set of concept plans have been developed for each FPID. So you can see 445057-1 is the flyover. The 445056-1 is the westbound to northbound, and the 445056-2 is the westbound to southbound. The PD&E commitments are briefly summarized here and consist of the following. As we mentioned, we have bicycle and pedestrian connections and Tampa Heights Greenway improvements. It also includes taking the existing slope pavement at Palm Avenue, 14th Street, and 15th Street to widen to provide bike ped underpass areas. Those are going to be the gravity walls, so it's not a full cutback there. Extending the Tampa Heights path on the west side of I-275 north to Columbus Drive and south to Perry Harvey Park, and adding new paths to the east side of I-275 along the north side of I-4 to 15th Street and along the south side of I-4 to 21st Street. Existing noise barriers impacted by widening will be replaced within the same limits. The TIS urban design guidelines will be implemented with the inclusion of hardscape and landscape to complement the historic communities and minimize visual effects. Audible and visual effects impacts to historic resources will be minimized, and implementing additional noise mitigation efforts during construction to minimize adverse effects. We will now provide an overview of the roadway improvements for each of the 3 operational safety improvements by FPID. The 445057-1 consists of the southbound I-275 to eastbound I-4 movement, involves widening the existing 1-lane flyover ramp to eastbound I-4 to 2 lanes, modifying the exit ramps to Ybor City, East Tampa from 21st to 22nd Streets to 14th, 15th Street, consisting of a southbound I-275 exit ramp off the flyover and a northbound I-275 exit north of Palm Avenue, and widening eastbound I-4 existing from Frontage Road, 13th Avenue to 2 lanes. The roadway improvements begin south of Florabraska Avenue along the southbound I-275 exit ramp to eastbound I-4 and continue to the east along I-4 to 21st Street. Improvements to ramp NE, the existing ramp from southbound I-275 to eastbound I-4, consist of adding a lane resulting in a 2-lane ramp. North of the flyover bridge, the ramp will be reconstructed to remove the existing sag vertical curve, which many of you, I think, have probably experienced. A new exit ramp WE-B, will be added from northbound I-275 to 14th Street, just north of Palm Avenue. This ramp will replace the existing I-4 ramp to 21st Street and will eliminate the weave to the exit along I-4. This portion of the ramp will be a single-lane ramp. East of the flyover bridge, ramp NE will be widened to 2 lanes consisting of inside and outside widening, and the new ramp WE-B will be constructed adjacent to the outside of ramp NE. Continuing to the east, ramp WE-B adds a second lane from ramp NE. I hope y'all are keeping track of all these ramps. For the southbound I-275 exit to 14th Street via slip ramp NE-B. I-4 is also widened to accommodate the additional second lane for ramp NE. 13th Avenue between 15th Street and 21st Street will be widened to 2 lanes and will be shifted to the inside to provide space for a 12-foot shared use path on the south side of the roadway. The existing I-4 exit ramp to 21st Street will be removed, as you can see in the hashed. Moving on to 445056-1, it includes the following: widening the existing one-lane ramp from I-4 to northbound I-275 to 2 lanes, and continuing with an additional merge lane on northbound I-275 from the interchange to north of Dr. MLK Jr. Boulevard exit. The roadway improvements begin just west of 14th Street along westbound I-4 and continue north to Florabraska Avenue. Westbound I-4 will be widened to the outside to add a 12-foot auxiliary lane. To accommodate the widening along I-4, 14th Avenue will need to be realigned at the intersection with 13th Street. Improvements to ramp EN, the existing ramp from westbound I-4 to northbound I-275, consist of widening the existing ramp to 2 lanes. The ramp will be widened to the outside, and the inside shoulder will be reconstructed. Northbound I-275 will be widened to the outside to add a 12-foot auxiliary lane and will match the widening of 443770-1 at Florabraska, which is currently under construction. The existing lanes north of Florabraska will be restriped for the additional lane to MLK Boulevard. To accommodate the widening along ramp EN, Talaferra Avenue will need to be realigned north of Columbus Drive. Moving on to 445056-2, it consists of improvements for the westbound I-4 to southbound I-275 movement and involves the following: widening the 2-lane ramp from I-4 to southbound I-275 to 3 lanes, widening shoulders on southbound I-275 from Palm Avenue to Jefferson Street, and reconstructing and shifting the downtown exit ramp to the west to accommodate the additional lane from I-4 to southbound I-275. The roadway improvements begin just east of 10th Street along westbound I-4 and continue south along I-275 to Jefferson Street. Ramp C, the westbound I-4 ramp to southbound I-275, will be widened to 3 lanes. Widening will be to the outside. Southbound I-275 will be widened to 5 lanes to accept the additional lanes from ramp C. Southbound I-275 will be widened to the outside. Inside shoulder widening on the bridges will provide for full width shoulders through the widening. Ramp F, the single lane westbound I-4 exit ramp to downtown, will be reconstructed and shifted to the west to accommodate the additional lane from I-4 to southbound I-275. Ramp B, the southbound I-275 exit ramp to downtown, will be reconstructed and shifted to the west to accommodate the additional lane from I-4 to southbound I-275. Now we move on to the design variations and exceptions. This is a current condition of our design exceptions and variations on the downtown interchange. As you can see, many are currently approved and many are anticipated to be approved soon. The following are primary estimated major roadway quantities for the 3 combined safety and operational projects. And moving on to the environmental permitting and drainage. A conceptual permit for the interchange as a whole was issued on October 26, 2020, and is being followed with construction permits for each FPID. A construction permit for the flyover 445057-1 was issued August 24th of this year, and a construction permit for 445056 was issued September of this year. The permit for 445056-2, which is the westbound to southbound, is anticipated to be issued before April 2022. There are two proposed ponds for the project, SMF3A and SMF4A. SMF3A is located on the west side of I-275, north of 7th Avenue. SMF4A is located to the northeast quadrant of the interchange between Ramp EN, Nebraska Avenue, and Columbus Drive. The existing ponds within the proposed project limits are also listed in the table.
Each of the 12 bridges proposed as part of the interchange improvement are shown here on this slide. Note that the color of the callout corresponds to the FPID associated with each of the bridge on the location map. The next 12 slides will provide a brief preview of each bridge and indicate key features used in determining whether it was a Category 1 or a Category 2 structure. Starting along the ramp from I-275 southbound to I-4 eastbound, we have the ramp bridge over Columbus Drive. The existing single-lane bridge is being replaced with a two-lane bridge and will be phase constructed for MOT. You'll note that this and several other bridges are indicated as Category 2 structures based on the presence of non-redundant foundations, which will require a central office independent department review. The next bridge on the project is the ramp flyover. This curved steel girder bridge will be widened to accommodate two lanes, be widened to both sides, the inside and the outside. Note the integral piers will require temporary false work, which are shown in orange and green, and this will be to support the widening of the pier cap. The design here illustrates a post-tension integral concrete cap cast around the existing steel diaphragm. This structure has complex components that qualify it as a Category 2 structure, which will require a central office independent department review. Next, moving along I-4 eastbound, the existing bridge over 14th Street will be widened. Please note, in order to maintain the minimum vertical clearance requirements at this location, a modified fib 36 is proposed on the right side. This bridge is indicated as Category 2 based on the presence of non-redundant foundations. Similarly, the existing bridge over 15th Street is also planned for widening. Note that we have existing aesthetic towers on each end of both of these two bridges. These towers will be reconstructed as part of the bridge widening efforts. This bridge is also indicated as a Category 2 structure based upon the non-redundant foundations. Next, the last bridge in this segment is for the new alignment carrying the traffic from northbound I-275 to the new ramp at 14th Street. It will be constructed adjacent to the existing I-275 northbound to I-4 eastbound ramp bridge over Nebraska Avenue, and it also consists of steel I-girders. This bridge is also indicated as a Category 2 structure based upon the presence of steel girders and the non-redundant foundations. Next, moving on to I-4 westbound and the 445056 bridges. We have two of them. The first one is shown here is the bridge over Nebraska Avenue, which is being widened to the outside. This bridge is indicated as a Category 2 structure based on the presence of non-redundant foundation. And then continuing up to Columbus Drive, this bridge is also proposed for outside widening, and this bridge is also indicated as Category 2 due to the presence of non-redundant foundations. Moving on to the third project, the 445056-2 bridges. We'll start from I-4 westbound and work towards I-275 southbound. The first bridge shown here carries mainline traffic over Palm Avenue. A partial deck removal, median barrier removal, and restriping of the traffic lanes is proposed at this location. A new single slope traffic railing barrier will be constructed along the left shoulder, and bridge fencing will protect the drop-off just left of the existing girder to remain. This bridge is indicated as a Category 1 structure. The partial removal of the mainline bridge shown on the previous slide will facilitate the replacement of the existing ramp bridge with a new one that will carry traffic from both Ramp F and Ramp B. The bridge width varies as the two ramps merge, and this bridge is a Category 1 structure. Next, the two mainline bridges are proposed for widening on both sides on southbound I-275. The first one shown here carries traffic over 7th Avenue. This bridge is indicated as Category 2 based upon the presence of non-redundant foundations. Moving on to the bridge over Henderson and Central Avenues, this bridge in its existing condition provides a substandard vertical clearance of approximately 14 feet. So in order to mitigate any further reduction, a modified FIB 36 is proposed on the left side. This bridge is indicated as a Category 2 structure based on the presence of non-redundant foundations. And lastly, there are currently two separate bridges carrying Ramp B over 7th Avenue and Henderson and Central Avenues. The bridge replaces both bridges with a single bridge spanning all three underlying roadways. This is due to the shared use path that's running underneath. This bridge is indicated as a Category 1 structure. So that wraps up all of the bridge structures, and moving on to retaining walls. In order to maintain right-of-way or to minimize right-of-way and maximize the improvements, retaining walls are an integral part of this project. The preliminary estimates are shown here. And also note this includes 1,340 linear feet of gravity wall at the underpasses of Palm Avenue, 14th and 15th Street to cut back the existing slopes for the bike pedestrian connections. We're going to run through each of the locations of the current concept retaining walls. Again, we'll start with the 445057 project, starting at Ramp E, carrying traffic from southbound 275 to I-4 eastbound. Here you'll see a tiered wall is proposed along the west shoulder. Now continuing east to I-4. Here the retaining walls separate the two ramps and includes widening in close proximity to an existing wall. There are several locations on the project similar to this, so please be aware of this. Moving on to 14th and 15th Streets. Retaining walls accommodate the bridge widenings, while gravity walls are proposed to cut back the existing abutment slopes and increase the clear area for the pedestrian areas under the bridges. Moving down towards Palm Avenue for the new ramp to 14th Street from northbound I-275. You can see the retaining wall along the outside of the new ramp. Now moving on to the 445056 project, we have widening to the outside of westbound I-4. And this is along 14th Street. It's a tight right-of-way there, and you can see the realignment of 14th Avenue to make that fit in the limits of the project. Moving to the new ramp, again, you can see the cross-section along ramp EN. There's an existing retaining wall that will need to be modified to accommodate the widening at the two bridges over Nebraska Avenue and Columbus Drive. Moving on, the planned wall at this section is used to avoid impacts to Taliaferro Avenue. Again, you can see it's tight in that area, and we're realigning Taliaferro Avenue. And then finally, at the north end, the wall reduces impacts to an adjacent ditch and keeps the improvements within the right-of-way. Moving on to the walls for the 445056-2 for the interchange, and retaining walls are needed to accommodate the different profiles of those ramps. And then between Palm and 7th Avenue, the retaining walls are planned between the new bridges being constructed between ramps B and F. And additionally, you can see the gravity walls on Palm Avenue underneath to accommodate the slopes being cut back for the bike pedestrian connections. And lastly, we have two remaining retaining walls at the south end of the project, one along the west shoulder of I-275 between the 7th and Henderson bridges, and another long wall along the west shoulder of ramp B. Moving on to geotechnical, there are extensive borings within the project limits as shown on this map. The boring consists of historical borings from the previous interchange projects. It also includes recent borings to supplement the current concept, and those recent borings correspond to the proposed conceptual bridges, walls, and pond locations. Bridge foundation evaluations. They have been performed based upon drilled shafts per the concept plans. Also to note, a micropile system alternative was evaluated for the flyover ramp bridge widening of the concept plans. Moving on to ponds. There were several of the borings that encountered a couple feet of apparent fill materials. It occasionally included some debris and unsuitable materials, but a majority of them are expected to be excavated with relatively clean sandy soils generally suitable for use as embankment and MSE wall fill. We'll now move into some additional project information, starting with temporary traffic control plans. All lane closures and detours on this project will require coordination with the Tampa Bay Sun Guide Center. The lane closures will have restrictions. Generally, the lane closures will be restricted to nighttime closures. Local road closures are still be coordinated with the City of Tampa and will be determined. And lane closures will be subject to damage recovery. For the detours, they're still currently being evaluated, but there will be pre-approved detour routes included in the RFP, and it's noted that any deviation to these pre-approved routes will require department approval through the ATC process. Detours will be subject to incentive, disincentive, and damage recovery. And I want to note, allowable closure times that will be shown on the following slides are still preliminary and subject to change, but we want to give you an idea of what we were looking at. There will be several detours needed for the construction of the flyover project. We wanted to point out the primary detour, and the highest profile one will be for the closure of the southbound I-275 to eastbound flyover ramp. Based upon the concept plans, this bridge will need to be closed with top-down construction. The primary detour route shown in the left graphic there will utilize the southbound I-275 downtown Jefferson Street exit, where traffic will be redirected and U-turned on Scott Street back to northbound 275 and I-4. Allowable closure periods will be restricted to night times. Currently, we're showing 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., and it's estimated that 100 individual nighttime closures will be required, and we're looking at using a 50-time use incentive, disincentive. Partial weekend closures were also evaluated for pier cap pours and cure times only. These partial weekend closures are anticipated again from 10 p.m. Saturday night to noon on Sunday, which is the lowest traffic volume through the interchange. It's estimated that 10 partial weekend closures will be required with a 5-time use incentive, disincentive. And then in the bottom right graphic, when the southbound ramp from I-275 is going to have overhead construction of the flyover, an alternate detour route will need to be utilized only for those situations utilizing Hillsborough Avenue. We're estimating this is about 8 of those 100 nighttime closures. We have additional special detour conditions we wanted to point out to you. Concurrent detours will be allowed with the closure of the I-275 to eastbound flyover ramp. These would be for the detour movements below the flyover when overhead work is required, and also for the Jefferson Street exit ramp. The other item to note is work requiring the use of the 2 detours for the new ramp, or from northbound I-275 to eastbound I-4 and the main line I-275. Those are going to require the completion of the new ramp to 14th and 15th Street prior to being used. That's where traffic will be detoured, so there is a special requirement that in there in the RFP. There are 4 signals on this project, signalized intersections at 13th and 14th Avenues and 14th and 15th Streets. We also want to point out that there is some restricted sight distances at the signalized intersections due to the bridge piers. So a right turn on red only will be required for the westbound approach at 14th Avenue and 15th Street, and for the eastbound approach at 13th Avenue and 14th Street. We will be replacing the pavement shields, and also, as we mentioned, Mary Lou mentioned, there would be restriping of the I-275 lanes north of Florabraska Avenue to MLK Boulevard. This is to accommodate that additional lane that's coming. Back over to Mary Lou to complete the presentation.
Okay, this project, being in a historic district, parts of it does have extensive requirements for aesthetics. The following slides will provide an overview of each of these elements. Roadway lighting will match existing powdered coating and pole tops, while underdeck lighting will be upgraded to LED wall packets. ITS elements will also be powder coated. New and existing concrete surfaces will be stained with a silicone acrylic concrete sealant. Proposed retaining walls will require either the shell Florida native limestone texture or bricks pattern texture. The original mold to manufacture form liners are stored at Tampa operations. Aesthetic fencing. Mesh wire welded fencing will be required for at-grade applications. A modified special provision will be provided. And many of you have probably already seen those on our I-275 projects that were previously used. Black vinyl coated chain link fencing is allowed on sloped and approved areas of constrained right-of-way. There are several types of specialty pavement at selected locations within the project limits, consisting of pattern pavement crosswalks, hex pattern stamped concrete crosswalks, and brick intersections, hex paver sidewalks, and brick sidewalks. Aesthetics at 14th and 15th Streets, where bridge widening will impact the existing features, will require matching replacements. These items include the brick towers with specialty lighting, the decorative bridge fiberglass reinforced panels with the public art medallions, beam lighting, specialty brick, and metal picket fencing. The shared use path will be solar powered and solar sourced to meet the City of Tampa requirements. Shared use paths are being added along the project limits to provide connectivity to the surrounding bicycle and pedestrian networks and communities. Highlights including extending the existing Tampa Heights Trail on the west side of I-275 and adding shared use paths along the north and south sides of I-4 with widened sidewalk connections at Palm, 14th, and 15th Street. There is existing landscape and irrigation to be maintained, as well as new landscape and irrigation to be installed. Finally, wrapping up with construction and procurement. There are several construction projects within the vicinity and limits of the project to be aware of that will either directly or indirectly interface with this project. The projects are listed here with a map showing the project limits and location. Stockpiling and staging sites shall be approved prior to use. Please note that sites inside the historic districts may be subject to Section 4 approval and Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. The design-build firm will be responsible for identifying and coordinating with vibration-sensitive sites impacted. The sites shown here have also been identified in the RFP.